Okay, hello all you crazy people out there. My name is Michael. I like wizards and dragons and making games. Welcome back to Data Structures in GameMaker. Today we're going to talk about queues. So in the English language, a queue of something, Q-U-E-U-E, just means a line. If you have a queue of people, that means that you just have people lined up for something. At the, for example, at the grocery store or in line at the ticket window at a movie theater or something like that. In computer science, and indeed in GameMaker, a queue is pretty much the same thing. If you have a queue of items, you just have a line of items and you have to deal with them one at a time in order. The only element in the queue that you are able to directly access is the one at the front. Nothing behind it is allowed to jump the line, that would be rather rude. Let's jump into some examples. So, as with all things, you can create a queue by saying dsq create, and of course by all things I mean all data structure and GameMaker things. And as with all data structures in GameMakers, if you want to destroy a queue, you can say dsq destroy, and you can pass the reference to the queue that we created. I am just going to type just a single letter Q here, because I am not going to type out the word Q-U-E-U-E more times than I have to. There are a lot fewer functions for dealing with queues in GameMaker than there are for things like lists and maps. When you add something to a queue, it is said that you enqueue it, so you could say dsq. And this is just gonna be truly the end of me when it comes to trying to spell words. DSQ, NQ. Oh, have mercy on me, Yo-Yo Games. And when you remove an item from a queue, when you remove the first item from a queue, I should say, you DSQ DQ. Some people, when they like to pronounce the word DQ out loud, they just say the word deck, which I think is mildly amusing because I'm imagining someone punching the queue in the face. It may also come abbreviated as DEQ to some people, but I'm just going to be going with the full word DQ here. And as for other terminology, the first element in a queue, so the only one that you're able to directly access, is DSQ, oh my god, Q head. And the one at the end, the one that you most recently added, although you're not really allowed to remove it or anything, you can say DSQ tail. So the front of the queue is the head, the back of the queue is the tail. When you enqueue something onto a queue, you add it after the tail, and then the new element becomes the tail. When you dequeue something from a queue, you are removing and returning the head, the element at the beginning of the queue, and whatever was second in line becomes the head of the queue. So to use a bit of a practical example, let's add some things to this imaginary queue. So when we first create a queue, it's empty, there's going to be nothing there. Now let's say that for the sake of argument, my dog comes along and she sits down on the floor. We could say that we've enqueued her. So we're just going to enqueue the dog. My dog is now the head of the queue. Since she's also the only thing in the queue, she also happens to be the tail of the queue. Next, let's enqueue something else. We can dsq enqueue, and I'm just going to copy and paste that so I don't have to type it out every time. Let's enqueue my rabbit, because I like using my rabbit for practical examples in these videos. So we can enqueue the rabbit. The dog is still the head, but now the rabbit is the tail, and the queue has a length of 2. Next, we can enqueue something else. I don't have any more animals on hand, so I'm just going to instead enqueue this Dragonite plushie that I've got sitting on my desk. So dog is still the head, Dragonite is now the tail. Next, let us enqueue something else. I have no idea what this thing is. My sister got it for me one year for Christmas. She said it looked stupid, so it reminded her of me. I'm just going to call it question, question, question. And that's going to get enqueued onto our current queue. So dog is now the head, and that mysterious stupid looking thing is now the tail. Our queue is now 4 elements long. If you wanted to, you could look at dsq head, and you could show message dsq head. This would simply show us what's at the beginning of the queue, and this would give us dog. So our dog is at the front of the queue. Game end. So I don't have to close the window manually. Likewise, if you wanted to, dsq tail, we can use dsq tail, and that is going to tell us the element at the tail of the queue. It will not, however, head and tail will not remove elements from the queue. If you want to remove an element from the queue, you have to use the dequeue function, and this will both return the first element, and we will get to see what it is, and it will also remove it. So if we were to, for example, dequeue my dog, I'm just going to annoy her for a minute, and she's going to get up and walk away. We're going to see the dog has been dequeued, and if I were to do this again, if I were to at least take a peek at the head of the queue, we are going to see the rabbit is at the head of the queue. So we have a dog who is at the head and who is being dequeued, and then we have a rabbit. who I'm not going to be mean to and push out of the way. Okay, those are DSQs. As with the other data structures in GameMaker, we have DSQ write and DSQ read, and also as with the other data structures in GameMaker, I don't really recommend using these functions because they're very old. They're kind of a legacy part of GameMaker. They're rather slow. And for the most part, saving and loading a queue to a string or to a file or something isn't really something you need to do very often anyway. Queues in general, as well as their close cousins, the stacks, aren't really data structures that you'll find yourself using in games very often. Some examples might be if you have a task list and you have to complete the first item in a task before you can move on to the second item in a task. So if you have something like a quest log, you might want to use a queue for that. This isn't something that you do very often at all in GameMaker, but if you're trying to implement something like reverse Polish notation for a math language parser, you might use a queue as well as a stack to keep track of the operators and operands. It's probably safe to assume that most people don't really need to do that. In general, anything that you can do with a queue, you can also do with either a DS list or just an array in GameMaker. And those two data structures come with the added benefit that you can, first and foremost, you can iterate over the contents of a DS list or of an array, which you can't really do with a queue without cloning it and dequeuing each of its elements, which kind of defeats the purpose. So if you wanted to do something like, for example, drawing each of the elements in the quest log on the screen, and you wanted to iterate over the quest log stage queue, in order to do that, you are probably better off using a DS list or an array. But nevertheless, those are queues. You can use them if you want. I'm going to stop here. As with the other data structures videos, I will not have any code for download in the description of this video. But I do try to post about 2 game dev videos a week, one tutorial like this one, and one Let's Make a Tower Defense game. So if you're interested in seeing any of that, feel free to subscribe. I have a Patreon, so if you want to contribute towards these videos being made, there will be links to that in all the usual places. You can see your name in the credits, hear yourself shouted out at the end. You can see a preview of my future plans. Otherwise, I hope you all found that useful, and I will see you all later. Special thanks to Connor, Edward Holt, Emily Koyo, Halo Factory, Posho, Sindra Larson, Tusk, and Zenith for supporting these videos. If you want to see your name in the credits or hear yourself shouted out at the end, head on over to the Patreon page down in the video description to join the fun.